GM, we do a little fam. Our season 3 mint is now live, and we need your support more than ever to keep the IRL podcast vibes going. We have $5 base NFTs, which allow you to burn one for an art piece based off the conversations we've had with our guests at the end of the season. If you own 12 base NFTs, that's how many you'll need to get a full set of art claims. On top of the base NFTs, there's also 15 premium NFTs priced at 1 ETH each. Each premium NFT owner is invited to one of our We Do a Little dinners. The dinners are a mixture of premium owners and guests we've had on the show. The next dinners will be during Art Basel Miami in December 2023 and NFT LA plus NFT NYC in early 2024. Premium owners also receive all 12 art claims via airdrop and all future base NFTs. Links to mint both the base and the premium NFT, as well as an article explaining all of our plans for Season 3 are in the show notes below. And without further ado, let's get into the 4th episode of Season 3. In the 4th episode of Season 3, we are joined by Magnus Resch. Magnus is an art market expert, serial entrepreneur, and best-selling author focused on bringing transparency to the fine art space. In his spare time, he's also a professor at Yale University. We dive into Magnus's background from starting and exiting Gymondo to falling in love with art collecting and the valuable insights he's gained from deep research of the fine art market. As always, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Andy, DeeZe, and guests may own NFTs discussed.
This is Andy.
Yeah, I'm DeeZe.
GM, everybody, we're back with another episode of We Do a Little Pod. This time we have a very special guest, Magnus Resch. Magnus is a art market expert, a university professor, book author, and just overall, I would say, art Chad. So it's nice to have you here with us today. It's the first time we've got to meet. We've hosted half dozen or so Twitter spaces, and we've got the vibe there, but this is the first time getting to make eye contact and talking to you. So thank you for coming, and how are you doing?
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks a lot.
You're one of the most on-time guests here, right? 10 a.m., ready to
so
jump in.
so German.
These morning podcasts, they're very, people a week or months ahead of time are like, fuck yeah, morning pod. And then the day comes and they're like, I was out till 4 a.m. and like, my voice is gone. So thank you for being here.
Of course. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
But, I mean, we first met, I believe, through, is it Justin?
Yeah, Justin. I just saw him yesterday. We were spending time. He took a portrait of me outside of the NFT gallery in the Lower East Side.
Nice.
Together with Annika, a curator from Berlin.
Okay.
So we had this nice get-together, and Justin and I became friends. He was one of the first people from the NFT space who I actually spent a lot of time with, and we talked a lot about his work, but also what the NFT space means. And then he introduced us.
Yeah.
And since then, we've been hosting a lot of Twitter spaces.
It's been over a year, I think, now.
Yeah, it's been over a year. A lot of Twitter spaces, always about the intersection of art, the traditional art market, the NFT space, technology, business, money.
Yeah. A little bit of provenance and all that fun
And how
stuff.
did you meet Justin?
Justin find you? Is Justin like in the DMs?
No,
like,
yeah,
I mean, Justin, he's a maniac in those DMs. I wouldn't be shocked.
He's a connector. For
Yeah.
sure.
No, it's interesting. Justin reached out to me via Instagram.
Yeah.
Sounds about right, yeah.
3-4 years ago and said, "Hey Magnus, can we chat? I'm an artist." Back then, he had nothing to do with NFTs.
Yeah.
He said, "Hey Magnus, I'm an artist. Can we chat? I'd like to understand more how the art market works, how to get into galleries and so on." And yeah, and this is how it started.
So your Instagram is a pretty big Instagram. I feel like, is that your main platform compared to like Twitter or YouTube?
Yeah,
or
by
Instagram
far.
is like where you focus your time.
Yeah, I am. So my audience are art world people, and they are not on Discord.
No.
Most people have never. Most of the art world people haven't heard of Discord, and they aren't on Twitter so much. They're really on Instagram. Instagram is the number one platform for artists, for collectors, gallerists, curators. Everyone who's in the art world looks at Instagram because it's a visual platform.
Sounds like I need to make an Instagram.
No, definitely. I mean, Magnus is a big Instagram account. I think the last I checked, you have like 600,000 followers.
Wow.
And you hit it, you're like, oh shit! Like, how has your growth kind of happened? Because right now you're in your late 30s, right?
Yeah.
And you've been doing this for a while. Like, how has your journey into the art world happened? Were you deeply involved as a kid? Did you?
Yeah, not at all.
No.
A lot of people in the art world come from these rich collector families. They grew up around art. That wasn't the case with me. I'm not from one of these rich families. Not the rich kid.
Yeah, not an heir.
No, that grew around, Basquiat's and Warhols and so on. Every now and then I was forced to go into a museum, like parents.
Yeah, like the school field trip is like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, maybe
On a
I'll see
rainy
like a
Sunday,
dinosaur bone or
drag
something,
you.
and that'll be cool.
I mean, maybe I'll get a cool water bottle from the gift shop.
Yeah.
That was my taste.
But I always liked art, but I was never really, I never wanted to pursue a career in the arts and so on. But I went to, for a moment, I went to a high school in Düsseldorf. And my high school was directly next to the famous art academy of Düsseldorf, where all the big superstar artists went to. Gerhard Richter, who's the #1 living artist today, he was a professor there. Andreas Gursky, #1 photography artist today, was a professor there, and so on. So it was really, think of it as the Harvard of the art world at a certain point. And my high school was directly next to it. So when I had free time, I met those artists from that school at the bars which were nearby. So that's how I got involved in the art world, because really over drinks at the bar in Germany, you can drink when you're 16. Very important disclaimer. No, how is that possible? How can they be drinking? So that's when I bonded with a couple of artists, and then I went to the army and we stayed in touch, and I realized that they all have one major problem, and that is they don't know how to sell their art. They need to make money, but they don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started.
So you go into the army for a little bit and you come out. What does that look like? Are you now going to a art school to learn more about art history, or are you still like, oh, these artists are awesome and I like them and I see they have this problem, but like I don't really think I can help them. I just came out of the army. Like, how did that transition go?
Yeah, it exactly like you said. I always stayed in touch with them, and visited them in their studios when I had free time. Sometimes on the weekends you have off, so I traveled to see their work. And my brother, who is 3 years older than I am, started get a job in investment banking. So through him, I had a network of younger crowd who had some money, and they all wanted to be cool.
Yeah, they wanted
the
to
first
flex
thing that they
and
did,
have
what the investment
their
bankers
home.
are like.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? With
Yes,
the first
I do.
bonus,
They have money
buy a
in their
watch.
taste and they want to
Yeah.
show off the money.
And then, they go out to clubs and so on. And then thirdly, they like to show off.
Yeah.
Because once they bring someone home, they like to show, hey, this is my art, this is my place. So I started selling to these guys because I needed to make some money.
Yeah. So you knew early on you had this group of younger, affluent people that
Who
you
had
knew
no
through your
idea
brother.
about art,
Yeah.
but needed to fill the white space above the sofa.
Yeah. And so at this point, how old were you at this point?
20.
Okay. And so how much did you know about the art that you were selling them? Would you say that you were like, pretty well versed in it? Like thinking back now with how much you know, how were you kind of faking it till you made it, or?
Well, so with art, I never understood what it means to study art history. Because with contemporary art, it's not so much about the history of art or really putting it into an art historical context. It's more about, hey, I know these guys. I'm very close to them. They are my friends. I spent time with them in the studio. I know why they're doing this, why they're painting like they're painting. Because we are hanging out. We spend so much
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
So obviously you ask them, hey, why do you paint like this? And they tell you these stories. So I was equipped with a lot of stories about their background and why they're doing what they're doing, which helped me to sell. Hey, and then in the end, the price point, we're talking about $3,000 to $5,000. So very early on in the career, these artists were still at art school. So, you know, the damage that I could cause or they could cause with the wrong decision wasn't so bad.
Yeah, it wasn't like some astronomical mistake. You dropped
$200,000
$200,000
and Warhols.
No, so you're talking to the artists that you're friends with, and you're like, hey, like, we know some people. Were you just like, can I represent you? Like, I'm assuming you didn't have like a gallery or like a place to just house all the art. So is it more just like you're talking to them as friends and being like, hey, I'm talking to people, I'm showing off everything I love about you, and other people are receiving it very well. So like, do you think there's something here where we could work together? Is that
That's exactly how I was literally, I remember I was flying to London. In my hand baggage, I had 2 artworks. So put them in, you know, does that fit into the thing? And the funny thing is, I remember that very well because it was all bubble wrapped. But one of the pieces that I sold was actually a part of an airplane. So the artist was cutting out parts of an airplane. So I had this window of an airplane in the overhead in the airplane. So, and that artist, that was a great sell. I mean, I sold it for a couple of $1,000s and it's now worth $150,000. $200,000. So that guy still thanks me today that that I sold him this.
That's crazy. So like one thing I realized we have a similarity is this, like, we didn't really go in expecting to love the artists or anything, but after talking to them and spending time with them really in person in their studio while they're doing their craft, like all these light bulbs start going off, like, this is undervalued. Like, what these people are thinking about, all the work they're doing to create this and how much of themselves they're putting into the work is like, people don't get this online. Like, they don't understand when they're just looking at Instagram. I'm sure maybe Instagram was not out when this was happening, but for me, it was like a similar thing where I didn't ever expect to until I started talking to the artists. And that's not something I expected in our conversation, because I don't think I've actually got to ask you the early days. It was much more like post book professorship, etc., that way. But it is interesting that it seems similar where you were just talking to the artist and like, holy shit, like there's a lot here and that's
still today. I only collect, so it's very simple. I don't collect as an investment, never did. Obviously it makes me happy when the price increase, but it rarely happens. Art is not a good investment, but I'm sure we talk about this later. But today I only buy from artists who I personally meet, who I spend time with, because I want to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Collecting art for me, and that has always been the same thing. I'm not going to collect your work if I don't have your phone number in my telephone, and I can call you up and you actually pick up, and I can write with you on WhatsApp and so on. Yeah. So there's really always important. A personal connection with whoever I buy.
Yeah, I think that's something where early on I maybe collected too much work and I wasn't as intentful in that process. And now I'm going back and it's very similar. It's all right. I'm
curating those relationships.
Super intentful about like, who am I very close with? Who am I, like, who can I complete? Like, there's some artists where I feel like I can complete their sentences almost. And like, those are the ones where I'm like, okay, I just want to like collect more of your work rather than collecting another piece from a new artist. And I found that maybe I should have just had that approach from the beginning, because it created some interesting scenarios where it's like, oh, the expectations aren't aligned.
But there's also a difference, right? Because you started buying digital art. So with digital art, with physical art, you actually build up the connection because you have to talk to the artist. You have to go and actually ask them, at least ask them, how much is it? And this is the conversation. This is where the conversation starts. Oh, you know, you wear these socks. Well, you wear these socks. So you start a conversation. And with digital art, you know, you click and you have it. So it's just harder to start a conversation when you buy digital art.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to see like the different types of artists in the digital art space. Like there are certain artists who are like completely anonymous. You don't get their phone number, can't have that in real life studio visit. But then most of the artists are very
personable, doxed. Like, you have their phone number, you could go to their studio or their house, and they're like the nicest people. But there are like this wide spectrum, which I don't really feel like when I think of the traditional world. I think like Banksy, and I'm like, I don't really think of other people aside from him who are like that level of big. But then also like people aren't like phoning him up after they buy his work at Christie's.
I feel like probably a big part of that is just like the influence that Xcopy has had on like the NFT space, where like when the most successful, and also like Pac, even though like, he's a bit different, but like two of the probably the two highest selling artists in NFT space ever, almost no one knows who they are and has never seen their face. And like you can speculate about who they are, and people have some ideas, but I'm sure that
part of the
influences
branding.
a lot.
Right? I mean, why is Banksy so successful? One of the reasons is because he's mysterious.
Yeah.
Another thing which I find so interesting is So when you started buying NFTs, you are in direct contact with artists. I was fortunate to be in that position because these artists didn't have any gallery representation. They were still in their studios in the art academy. So there wasn't any intermediary between us. That's not the normal case. Usually when you buy art, there's a gallery that kind of manages the communication that you have. And very rarely you actually get to speak to the artist. And that's something that artists in the NFT space are confronted with, which is very new to traditional artists because they very rarely have to deal with customers. The gallery handles that stuff. While in the NFT space, wow, it's so intense. You directly I have to communicate with you if I'm an artist. Maybe I don't like you. Maybe you're annoying. Maybe you constantly send me messages about your art ideas. People do that. Collectors constantly want to reach out to artists.
I
and
definitely
can be
don't
annoying.
do that. That would drive me
people
crazy.
do it though for sure. Like
an X copy. If you just been like a bull fucking a bear, dude, it's just be so.
Well, I feel like even worse than like the art critique is. I feel like a lot of collectors have very strong opinions about how much supply should you have, what art should you be releasing when, and all of that. And it's insane to me that people are like, "Hey, bought your work, love it, but I have some notes." Like,
hey, I was last night at the Beeple proof event where Beeple was live drawing one of his creations, and then he said, "Hey, give me some inspirations." And for the next hour, I'm not joking, for the next hour, people were throwing things at him and approaching him while he was painting over his shoulder saying, oh, do this, do this, do this. That went on for 1 hour until he said, all right.
Yeah.
So what's the final output?
Everyone please shut the fuck up.
I mean,
is it just crazy?
Well, I actually don't know if it ended after an hour because I left after an hour.
He was like, I can't handle this anymore.
After I told him my idea. It's like, no, do this.
If you could just do a Pikachu with a Sam SBF Pro.
But it's also a dick butt.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I feel like Beeple is somebody who probably gets the brunt of it when it comes to getting barraged by ideas because he puts himself out there every day with something crazy.
And he also is so obviously like not afraid to do something that's very topical or like...
No, and he definitely will. Like there are days where on Twitter some type of zeitgeist gets to him and he's like, oh, this is today's thing. It's like, I got on Twitter, this is what everyone hit me with, and now this is what I am going to make my one a day of. Yeah,
well, it's so funny, like when he did the one for like Nakamigos, and people are like, oh, he's trying to like pump his Nakamigos back. It's like, you think that Beeple's trading fucking Nakamigos? He sold an NFT for $69 million. He's fine. He's not like day trading PFPs.
Yeah. No, speaking of Beeple too, I was at his studio launch a few weeks back, and if you are ever in Charleston for one of his events,
he invited me. The next one is
I highly recommend it.
It's huge.
It's a massive area, but then he has these printers in the ceiling that print off NFTs. And then you can redeem them for a real NFT from him. So he does this, like, it's basically an IRL airdrop. There's like a dozen printers up in the ceiling in black boxes, and paper just starts coming out. And you're like, what's going on? And then all the tall people just make like thousands of dollars because if you get one of them, I mean, his NFTs sell for a lot of money, and he's just dropping them from the ceiling. And it's like, I've never seen any IRL event like this where like he was even doing editions that were printer paper, but people were jumping up and grabbing them. And it's like, well, you just ruined the quality of that edition. It was like he printed 330 of these pieces of printer paper that weren't NFTs, and then sprinkled in were like 4 of one NFT, 6 of another. And people were just smashing the paper because you're jumping up, you're fighting over it. And now it's like, I don't know how many of these came out in mint condition, but not 300. Like, I got one, and it looks like, you know, receipts in that book just crumpled together. And it's like, that's my Beeple. This is like...
I feel like it's almost part of the experience. Like, I'm sure he recognized that was probably going to happen, and that's like kind of part of it is a lot of them are going to be.
But he has this like whole shrine too to just like artists. Like, he has these pillars with full projector lights going around all these walls where all these artists are submitting their work. And for me, it was the first time I got to experience a lot of their art that just wasn't on a phone screen or my computer screen. And you don't realize, or I didn't realize, how important the scale is of a lot of the digital stuff they're making, and how much, like, much more impact it has on you when it is a giant screen on a wall or a giant pillar versus, like, I'm scrolling Instagram and I look at it, or, like, even on your computer when you zoom in, it's, like, not really high fidelity or clear. And I just really appreciate, like, he's the only one I see really in the space who's made a ton of money. Like, you know, Pox made $200 million. We haven't heard from him since his last drop. Xcopy is doing his thing. He's anonymous. But, like, Beeple is the one who made a bunch and was like, I'm plowing it back into my art and also the community. So I, like, if you...
Or you could say he's building his brand further.
Yeah.
He's employing what Warhol did. Warhol called it the factory.
Yes.
If he hadn't used that term, people would call it the factory. The events that he's doing, it's mind-blowing what I saw yesterday there. What you're telling, the studio experience, it's uncomparable to anything any artist has ever done. Warhol's studio experience at the factory was great. People were talking about it. Journalists wanted to come. Other artists found it as an inspiration. So many things were created out of this experience. And Beeple is bringing it to the next level. This guy is brilliant in building his brand.
Yeah.
Because he realized, hey, I don't work with galleries. I'm not part of the system. So if I want to win this game and have lasting value, I need to have the strongest brand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. I feel like there was a period of time where I wouldn't say like fell out of favor in the NFT space, but like after his really big sale, he was like pretty off the grid in a lot of ways for a bit, at least in like the like general conversation around like crypto art.
He was still making his everyday.
Yeah,
but
like,
was like in
crypto
quiet,
Twitter wasn't talking about his work or
quiet build mode.
Yeah, and it's been so cool to see him kind of really come back into the forefront with all of this. I think like him building his brand is really valuable to.
Yeah, he's a star.
Yeah, especially because there was like.
Yes, people were obsessed. It's like a cult. And then Kevin is talking, and I mean, it was just wild.
Yeah.
It's really
What was so like? You've been going to events all week. What have been some of the highlights of your week?
I'm still in this week today. I don't know.
Yeah,
how many more
it's
events.
Friday. It's like we're nearing the end of the craziness.
Highlights. So I saw a couple of things this week which I found super interesting. I think what Mikol from
Vertical Crypto Art?
Crypto Art is doing is fantastic. She has. I've been following her work for a while, and I think she is probably the number one person when it comes to showing authentic art that is not built for the next money grab, but it's really built for the art. And she does an incredible job in filtering and curating. She works like a gallerist, but is not a gallerist because she brings it to the next level. This is really where I see the gallery model evolving. Her show in Brooklyn that she's doing together with Malcolm Levy from Refractional Festival is an experience.
I heard it was fucking insane. Like really, really cool.
The speakers that she lined up are fantastic. So everything is there. There's art. I minted a piece by Mario Klingemann.
Oh, nice.
I minted another piece where an artist took a photo of me and then a poem was created out of this. So it's this experience, not only screens
That's
or
nice.
paintings, but there is something to explore. And then there's one section where great panelists are talking about topics that I was actually interested in and were not there to promote their own brands, as you often see at
Very
NFT
important.
NYC. And the vibe was just very friendly. I got to talk to the artists. but in general, I felt like I'm leaving this with so much more content, and I learned a lot there. And she's been doing it. This wasn't the first time that she's been doing it. She's been doing it last year and the year before, and so she's just been in it for so long. I think Nicole from Vertical Crypto Art is, if I would have to put 5 people on a on a SWAT team, she would definitely be one of them. And don't ask me who the other 4 are. Maybe Beeple is one of them.
So very early on, her and Josie Bellini were like the only 2 people hosting any type of show around the crypto art. And that was how I found her. It was like 2020. You go to YouTube, you type in a couple artist names, and you type in like podcasts. And literally only her and Josie were talking to artists back then. So like she's been around since like prior to everything blowing up.
She's earned her stripes.
She's been here for the art like since the beginning, and that just gets rarer and rarer as time goes on. She's like an art gnome figure in my head.
Yeah.
Like he's very close to like Jason in terms of just like being early and being consistent.
Yeah, Jason was there early. He reached out to me, I think in 2016 or 17 or so, via LinkedIn and said, hey, this is what I'm doing, and so on. So he's really been at the forefront of this development too. When you ask about other highlights, so this was definitely a highlight. Then I found the Beeple event, which was by Proof last night in Brooklyn. That was very special because it showed me that I've been to hundreds of studio visits, hundreds of live art painting sessions. That one brought it to the next level in terms of everything. The setup was pretty spectacular. The love that he received from the audience was, I've never seen anything like that before. Even with superstar artists like Hockney or Warhol, people are obsessed with him. They all want to touch him. They want to ask him questions. They want to take photos with him. He's a real star in this world.
He puts himself out there so much. Like I've seen him at 4 events this week or 3 events, and it's always just giving everybody handshakes, hugs. It's like, I feel almost bad in a way because I'm like, I think like, damn, you got to be fucking tired. It's like 2 a.m. or this crazy thing, and like he's still getting swarmed by people. Holy shit!
Yeah, and then what Kevin put together there is just incredible.
Yeah,
and he focuses so much on art. So before I went there, I went to Venus over Manhattan. That's also
Adam.
very interesting. Adam, yeah, a very interesting combination because Proof is smart. I feel like they understood, okay, art can be a focus of our community. So who do we partner with? There are 1,500 galleries in New York City that you can partner with. But if you really care about lasting success of the artists that you work with, unfortunately, this is how the art world is structured. There are only a handful of galleries that you can work with. And they were smart enough to identify one of them, which is difficult, right? If there are only 5 to 10 galleries that are really bring you lasting success and 1,490 are not, it's very easy to find the other ones, right? And they did it well, I think. And the show was exhibited by Emily Xi, who is someone who I followed for a long time, and I really like her work. She approaches it in a very smart way. So those were highlights. And then, I mean, I went to so many other things. The punk lunch yesterday.
Were there a lot of people there?
Yeah. I mean, it's
I
wild.
went to the one
It's like 600
last
of us
year,
in a
and
Telegram chat.
it was a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
These people are just hardcore. I mean, it's like the Bored Apes, right? I mean, everyone... If you don't wear a punk somewhere, you're not part of that crowd.
I never wear my punk.
No, me either.
That's my whole thing. It's like people will know me from my voice normally.
Yeah.
Or like I'm known for wearing this Killer Acid clothing, but I never have the punk on me. A lot of them have the necklace that's like I spent 30 ETH on this necklace, or they have like an Apple Watch and they like tap the watch.
T-shirts, caps, nothing.
No, I don't do anything.
Nothing.
Most people don't know who I am. It's nice.
I used to carry a 50-pack of 3D glasses in my bag, and I'd put on 3D glasses before I went places. And then I got like headaches. Like wearing 3D glasses isn't something that normal people do.
Yeah.
You
Life's
just
already
walk
3D
down
enough.
the street in Brooklyn with the sun blasting your eyes, and you're like cross-eyed, seeing blue and red. You're like, am I really doing this for the bit? Like, not really. What are some of these other? Going back to what you just said was really insightful. ton of galleries,
I was
but
gonna
only
ask the same
5 to 10 that may give you the lasting, success that you're looking for. What are some of the others? Venus over Manhattan being one that come to your mind.
Before that, if you don't want to name names, I'm also curious about what are the traits of a gallery. What is it about Venus over Manhattan?
Yeah.
That's an easier one if you don't want to
No,
call
no,
out. I would love for you to
totally.
name names, but if you want to just give like traits, I'm also curious.
So just to let you know, I buy from the 1490 gallery. so I buy from those guys because the other galleries, those at the very top, it's just too expensive for me. So what we did is I'm an economist. I look at data in the art world. Maybe when we take a step back, we'll talk about how I got into this.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, I was selling art. Eventually, I started a gallery because I needed a permanent place to show art.
And was this in Germany? Or
No,
New
that
York,
was
or?
I eventually studied in the US for my undergrad, but I had a gallery in Switzerland.
Okay.
I was doing shows there and so on. And while I was doing this, I realized my gallery is doing okay. I'm more like second league, but what do I need in order to get to the first league? So I wrote my PhD on that because I was just curious. And if I go to another gallerist and ask them, why are you successul? To explain that to me, obviously he won't do it because you're
giving you all the competitive outfit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But when I write him an email and say, hey, I'm a PhD student,
hey, I'm doing research,
and then they're like, oh, you want to write about me in your book? Of course I'll tell. That's smart.
Well, and that's what I did. But I actually did write the PhD and the book, so it wasn't all fake.
You got the secrets.
Yeah. So I was genuinely interested in that, and that was my PhD about. When I was doing my PhD, I was still selling art. So I met this guy, a tech investor, and he said, "Why?" Because I wanted to sell him art, and he said, "Why are you doing all this art stuff? Come to Berlin." I was doing my PhD in Hong Kong. Come to Berlin and let's start internet companies. So I did that. It had nothing to do with the art world, but I was interested in tech. Yeah. So I did that, and one of those companies, I had a couple of failures, but one of them was very successful, an online fitness company, workout videos. That was 10 years ago. So today people are like, oh, obvious. Yeah, but 10 years ago,
was early,
pre-Peloton, pre all of this. I saw P90X. Remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
These workout videos, and I was surprised that they were sent by a DVD. So I thought, I can put this online, right?
Yeah.
So I hired these trainers, recorded videos, and sold it as a subscription, $9. And that worked out really well.
What was the company, if you don't mind me asking? I was in college at the time, 10 years ago.
It was in Germany, out of Germany, in Europe. It's called Gymondo. It's a super successful, super profitable business. It was sold to the largest German media company, and it's still the number one by far in the market, and highly profitable because subscription model, videos, you create them once, and only has a few employees.
Fitness has only gone up over the last however many years. As
crazy.
Far as
I mean, I wish I had kept it, especially during COVID, but back then nobody would have foreseen this. But I wasn't too passionate about fitness, so I took the money and then came to New York to focus on my academic career, because I had that PhD, but I left a little bit the art world behind, at least from an entrepreneurial point of view, or being too active in it. I was more active as a collector. And when I was in New York, I started two companies. One is called Larry's List, which is the largest online database for art collectors, and it has a very popular Instagram account, Larry's_list. And what we do on this Instagram account is we portray art collectors. So every day you get to see how a real prominent art collector lives with his or her art. Super interesting, and people love it. It feels like...
So it's almost like when you do those, like kind of almost like the art version of when you get like the Architectural Digest home tour and like that.
I mean, I don't know how many times they took photos from us or we took photos from them. It's very much that.
Very cool.
But always around art and art collectors.
I'm looking at like the first 20, and I love this. How did I not know this? That's why we do the pod. I'm just
Yeah.
like, we've been talking for over a year. I don't think I've ever heard you mention Larry's List.
Yeah, Larry is also a...
Who's Larry? Why was it called Larry's List?
Yeah, so I co-founded it together with my business partner, Chris, who is running the operations. And... yeah, I'm not going to say why we called it Larry because
I'm just like,
I remember that day.
Some art collector named Larry or some.
Yeah.
What was
We
the
like the
inspiration?
alliteration. The alliteration's nice. Larry's List.
Yeah, the funny thing is, when we launched it, I received this phone call from a journalist from I think the Observer, and I was in Berlin. We launched it. We were having the launch party in Berlin, and this guy called me. It was probably, I don't know, 5 p.m. New York time, and it was late in Berlin. And we were obviously, partying, launch party, and so on. And he called me and said, "Why do you call it Larry's List?" I was like, couldn't give him an answer because I didn't want to.
Yeah.
It's like, why do you call it that? He asked me 4 times, and I was, in a good mood, and I found this so awkward and strange that he repeated the same question 4 times. So that was, and since then I decided I'm never going to reveal why we call it Larry's List, but it worked, and people love it.
The inspiration to kind of do this kind of architectural digest style, like get into the life of a collector? What made you think to do that?
Because when I wrote my PhD, I realized, hey, the biggest reason why galleries are successful is because some galleries just have a few collectors, but these are heavy buyers. It's not about the number of collectors you have. Usually, weaker galleries that don't have so much profit have larger numbers of collectors than the top galleries.
Yeah.
But the top galleries have those collectors who are just spending and spending and spending. So it's not about the quantity. It really is
like
about
mobile games or a lot of things in life are like that.
It's the power laws. It's like
Yeah.
if you get one of those top 3 collectors, top 5, top 10, whatever collectors, and they trust you and they trust the
Then you win.
relationship
Yeah.
they have with you, and they know that the artists you're bringing on are vetted and people that you love, then that is like all you really need. You don't need a million people who are buying pieces under 5,000. You need 5 people who are buying pieces over $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the original business idea of Larry's List, that we said we create a database of the biggest art collectors. So when you, in the early days, when you went to the website, you could have said, all right, I'm looking for a collector of whatever, this artist in Hong Kong. And it will pull out the collectors that we researched before. We hired a team of 40 researchers around the world to enter that data, and then you can purchase the data of these collectors. So who are they, and what's their contact detail, what's their, I don't know, their social media or their email address and so on. It's one of the reasons why we started it in Hong Kong, because data privacy is a bit different there than it is in the rest of the world. So
definitely not something to start in Europe.
No.
Definitely in Hong Kong. So
that's how it originated, because we realized, hey, everyone is after these collectors.
Yeah.
And as you said, right, you want to meet those big collectors.
Yeah.
And we identified there are 6,000 collectors, only 6,000 collectors who spend more than $100,000 on art every year.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Because you always think it's a huge market, right? But it's really those 6,000. And those 6,000 are already with a few galleries. That's why so many galleries are struggling. 50% of all galleries making a loss. And there are only a handful of galleries that are making a decent profit. Why is that? Because those 6,000 collectors buy from those top galleries. They don't buy from the smaller ones that I buy from. They buy only from the top ones. And that is the key reason why so many galleries are struggling. They're going after these 6,000, but they're already committed in most cases.
So for the newer artists who are trying to get with one of these bigger galleries, like, is it kind of a process? I know it's changed over time, and now we have the internet, but is it kind of a process of like they just need to make those personal relationships with either a big collector who goes to one of those galleries often, or someone who works at that gallery? Or are these galleries like going out to different art schools over the U.S. and trying to like poach top talent, or like how
So
does that
finding a
work?
gallery is incredibly hard, and in most cases it's not even desirable, even though gallery artists think, hey, I need to find a gallery because that's my route to success. It isn't, because galleries are not making money, and then as an artist you depend on a gallery that is not making money, so that means you're not making money. Being an artist is incredibly tough. The number one degree that leads into unemployment in the US is
I'm gonna say art history or something like that.
Yeah, MFA,
Okay.
so Master of Fine Art. Average annual income, take a guess.
$31,000.
Probably even lower. Probably like 20,000.
All right, 25.
Okay.
In the middle.
Average annual income of an artist in Germany?
Has to be worse. 16K euros.
Yeah, I'll go 12K.
He's good. He's better than you, DeeZe.
Closer.
It's 9K for
whoa!
9K
That's
for
brutal.
a woman, 10K for a man. So it's just, in other words, it's incredibly tough to be an artist.
The odds are stacked against you.
Totally. Unbelievable. And that's what is even worse is that at art schools, you don't learn any of this. They tell you, you need to find a gallery and that's the goal. But once you found a gallery, that doesn't mean anything. That means the failure just continues. You're not going to make enough money. So you asked me about how do I get into a gallery? Well, we did this large research study. It took me 6 years. I published it in 2018 in Science magazine, which is the largest academic journal in the world. I highlight this because what we found out is highly provocative to a lot of established players in the art world. We were able to identify what makes an artist financially successful. Now, when you ask an art historian, hey, art historian, what makes, why is, Warhol so successful or Picasso? They say, oh yeah, look at the creativity. It's a revolution, cubism. He invented a whole new technique. When you ask an art collector, they will have their own very personal opinion and tell stories. When you ask a curator or a gallerist, everyone has an own very subjective opinion. And at the same time, you go into a museum and you see something and think, hey, I can do this myself. Why is that in a museum and sell for a white canvas is a great example. When you go to the Dia Beacon up north in New York State, there is one room, just empty white canvases. Each of them is between 600,000 to 2 million. So why is that
why
worth
people
so
care
much
about
money?
that? Yeah.
And that was the question why we did this research. The outcome of our research is the question was what makes an artist successful is this map. And when you Google my name and put in science, you find a visualization of this map. The map has a lot of little dots and a few bigger dots.
This is like a world map, you mean?
It's not a geographical map, but think of it, a piece of paper with a lot of different dots on it. Every dot is an art institution. We were able to show that there are only a few institutions which score larger dots. The size of the dot means what impact has an exhibition in this institution on my success as an artist? So from all these, there are 20,000 galleries, there are 40,000 museums, non-profits. From all these institutions that exist in the art world, only a few, 10 to 20, have large-sized dots. So an exhibition in these, and only in these, means it has an impact on your success as an artist. So in all of the others, 99.9% of all institutions scored low. Having an exhibition in one of these institutions has no impact on your career as an artist.
I bet you could almost even make the case that it has a negative impact because you're diluting your brand by working with one that doesn't have an impact.
Travel around, you have expenses, and you put all your trust into this one gallery. Now, that was shocking to find this out, and it took us a while to do this. But yeah, 6 years.
I'm curious, as you're doing this research, how are you how do you determine that they did or didn't have an outsized impact on your success? Was it basically like average sales over time, an increase after showing there, and kind of that?
Yeah,
that kind
so
of stuff?
we looked at another company that I built in when I moved to New York. Was an app that that work like Shazam for art. You can take a photo of an artwork and then it would immediately show you who the artist is, but also the price and comparable prices. So through this, we gathered a lot of pricing information from galleries, but also from auction houses. On top of this, we matched it to exhibition results, where did artists exhibit, plus 270 other factors, gender, race, size of the artwork, colors of the artwork, and so many other factors in order to find out. And then we used a mathematical principle from network theory, centrality, to bring all this data together, similar to how you can compare it to how the Google algorithms works. If one institution or one website is powerful and links to another website that is powerful, that website goes up and so on.
Yeah.
And this is how we created our network map. And the outcome is very simple. There's only one path to success. You have to be in one of these top institutions. And secondly, you have to be in it very early in your career. The first 5 to 10 exhibitions matter for your future career.
That's something that a lot of people probably don't want to hear. when you tell a bunch of young art students who are starting to get into it, that is the general reaction, like nihilistic almost, where they think, fuck, we're fucked, or does that drive them more to like really, really, really go all in and put everything behind it? Because I feel like that has to, because you're a professor talking to students all the time about this stuff, that has to like 180 some of their worldviews.
So I'm on a life mission, and that is I'd like to make the art market more transparent. So gallerists can make more money, artists can make more money, and more people enter the art market to buy art. Now, part of this making the art market transparent is talking about how it really is. At art school, nobody teaches you what's going to happen once you leave the school. I have art students reaching out to me at the end of their schooling and ask me, hey, Magnus, how shall I price my work? So I ask them, what have you been doing the past 2 years, right? Pricing is so important. How do you want to make money if you have no idea how to price your work at the moment that you leave the art school? And that's the reason why I wrote this book, How to Become a Successful Artist, where I present the data study that I just explained to you, and point out the reality, what the world that artists are entering, but also ways how artists can deal with it.
Okay. If you had to pick out like one particular way or one, like, what do you think is the most impactful thing that you can do as an artist to kind of deal with that or set yourself ahead?
I think the key message is your work is good. Your work should be in the MoMA. Your work should be in the Met. Why it isn't there is not because of your work. It's not because of you, who you are as a person. It's because of everything else. And that is the marketing, the branding, the galleries that you're working with. You haven't strategized on your career. It's your artist statement, your pricing, everything else, but it's not your art. And for an artist, you ask me, how do artists react to that when I communicate it to them? Well, I think since I'm German, I might tend to present it in a too harsh, too direct way. But the feedback has been incredible because artists realize they feel relieved because it's not them.
Yeah.
It's something that it's not their art that sucks. It's not their history and their emotions that go into the art. It's everything else, but
and
not
it's
their
more
art.
learned skills as well. And like, you can get better at marketing, you can get better at pricing, you can get better at your branding and all of that. It's a lot harder to just get better at being an artist, I feel like.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people in our space who have the art part down, but then the storytelling, the artist statement type stuff is just like, there's a lot of work to be done here to convey. Because you talk to artists when you sit down on a couch for 2 hours, and they're a completely different person than when you go to their website, you read the statement, you listen to them on a YouTube video or a podcast, and it's like, oh, they can do a lot to really get the message out in a better way.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's what I do. I started because not everyone can join my class at Yale.
Yeah.
It's
How did you?
limited, right?
We got to ask that. How did you become a Yale professor? Like,
I mean, that just comes. You know, I wrote my PhD in that topic, and there are not many people who look at this intersection, but also have real life knowledge from running a gallery, being super close to artists, writing. Parts of my PhD I translated into simple terms and wrote a book called Management of Art Galleries, which is the #1 book for every gallery owner. I can proudly say this because it's the only one.
but you're good at identifying like a niche that you're knowledgeable about and looking at the landscape and being like, there is nothing here for collectors, like the Larry's List. Like I didn't know stuff like that. But you've had this reoccurring theme throughout your life of like,
because I'm not coming from the art world, right? I had no idea.
Yeah.
And when I was running the gallery, I wanted to know who the buyers are, right? So all of these things, same with artists. Artists will always ask me, how do I become successful, Magnus? So that was the next logical step for me. First, I looked at galleries in my PhD, and then later on, I looked into the success factor of artists in the research study. And my upcoming book is about collectors.
nice.
So Management of Art Galleries is one book.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, which is my most successful book so far, is called How to Become a Successful Artist. We launched it, I think, 1.5 years ago and sold thousands of copies around the world. I think it's now in its 3rd reprint, translated in a couple of languages, because it helps artists to understand what's going on and where they're struggling. And the feedback I receive from artists is incredible. So many artists reach out to me and say, just last night I was at the, after the Beeple thing, I went to Chapel Bar where the after party was of an NFT talk. Justin was there and a couple of others. And an artist came up to me and said, hey, Magnus, thank you so much. This book really changed my life. And that's powerful, right? So, and my upcoming book is about how to collect art. That's actually the title of it. How to collect art, where I'm explaining to art collectors, hey, if you're looking to make money in the art world, maybe don't buy art. If you
that's important.
Yep.
Because there's definitely people who just get in and they're like, oh, this is like an asset class. They don't realize, back to the power laws, how important picking the right art is. Like, you just go in and buy it, and you look at it 5 years later, and you're like, where's the artist?
Well, investing in art is quite simple, right? You just need to buy blue chip artists at a super high price point and their best works. So for this, you need a little bit of knowledge. You need to know Basquiat, which works are the good ones, and with Warhol, because there are huge discrepancies.
And then you need a lot of fucking money.
And then you need a lot of money, so that cuts out a lot of people. Now, if you want to go in the art world with 20K and say, hey, I'm going to invest in art, I tell you it's not going to happen. You're not going to see your money again. But what I tell you is, and that's what I explain in my book, first I explain you that you're going to lose the money, full stop. That's already
the first principle of collecting art. You're gonna lose the money.
The money is gone. If you spend 20K, I can tell you the money is gone.
Yep.
Now, probably a lot of people reach out. Oh, Magnus, he's so wrong. There's this one artist I bought him for $5,000 and I sold him for $300,000. Yes, that happens, my friends. But in 99.9% of the cases, it won't happen. You can also win the lottery. That happens.
That happens sometimes too. You buy a Mega Millions, you walk away with a few $100 million.
And so that's the first thing you say. And then what's
Yeah, I explain to them, hey, look at, all these graphics, right? Art index compared to S&P 500. Look at art that has a 13.4 increase and S&P 500 only 7.5. Invest in art. Well, so I'm explaining to them, hey, actually what's happening there is they only look at a small segment of all the artists.
The index, yeah.
So small. And when you look at those artists, it's like picking the best of the best of the best. Because what they're doing is they're not looking at artists that made it into galleries, first step. They're actually looking at artists that made it into galleries, that made it into auctions, makes it 0.1%. And thirdly, they're looking at artists that made it into galleries, made it into auctions, and their works have been resold twice in auctions, repeated sales. So we are down from a million artworks to maybe 10. All right? So good luck finding those.
But then people use that as a
Marketing
heuristic
tool.
of like, oh, I need to buy art. Like, art's going up.
Yeah, and then you read the press, art sells for new record, 350 million for an artwork, and only 5 years ago it was sold for 10K. Of course, those stories exist. That's the headlines. The truth is it's incredibly hard to be an artist. It's incredibly hard to run a gallery, and it's incredibly hard to make money as a collector if you really look at art as an
So
investment.
what are some other tips you may have for collectors? Like earlier on, I know we talked about getting to know the artist, having that relationship, being able to call them on your phone, text them, get a response. You know, you don't have to go through their assistant to talk to them. Like, what are some other things you tell collectors who are, after they've come with the terms of, I'm going to lose the money, what is after that?
Yeah, I think the mindset is very important. Why am I collecting? I call it responsible collecting. So when I buy an artwork, I'm buying it because I like it. It really, it
Resonates
evokes,
with you.
yeah, it resonates. It evokes emotions in me. I can relate to it somehow. Secondly, I'm buying it to fill the white space above my sofa.
Yeah.
Simple utility. Thirdly, I'm buying it to flex. Right? I bought art in general. That's already good. That's better than buying a poster. When you buy an original piece. When I have people over, it's part of my style. It's part of who I am. I'd like to be seen as someone who is close to artists. I like to go to gallery openings. It's a social status that I convey when I buy artworks. And by the way, I'm talking about me right now,
No,
right?
yeah.
Like, I buy art also to flex a little bit.
Yeah. At the end of the day, everyone likes to flex a little bit.
I
That's
love
life.
talking about the art that I have at my house with guests, and I know the whole story, and I'm like, this composite photography piece from Kath, she's out there in the Canadian Rockies, like fighting off a bear. She's staying overnight in a cave to get this, and then like,
and then you can also be like, but she's also my homie. I could DM her right now and she'd answer me.
literally. So my friend's wife bought a full like $4,000 piece from her because she came to our house, looked at the wall, and was like, I want a print of that. And it was like her hearing the story from me immediately connected her to the artist. I texted the artist and was like, hey, my friend's wife would love to buy this piece. Is that cool? And she's like, yeah, here, give her my phone number. And it's like that.
Done,
now
yeah.
they're friends and talk, and it's like really humbling for me, but it's also a flex to be like, oh, I helped,
set you up,
create that, I don't know, that new relationship. Like, that's something where, as a collector, I feel like it's super important. Like, if you're buying a piece that you wouldn't be excited about telling to somebody at your house, like, maybe that's a good sign that maybe you shouldn't buy it.
Yeah.
Like, I love all the pieces in our house, and I feel like I could talk about all of them. But there are definitely prints in tubes that are in a closet that are not framed that I feel like I maybe don't have that connection to of, I would love to just talk about this with people in my house for the first time.
Totally. And the fourth element is, I call it, so what you do when you buy art, it's almost a philanthropic act because I don't get the money back, right? There's no resale value in it. That money is basically gone. So I gave you 3 reasons before why you're doing it. But a 4th reason is really because I'm supporting an artist. And with the artist, I'm supporting an entire community. Because those people, artists always come in networks. So when you buy one artist, all her friends see, all right, one of our peers just sold a work and made some money. So if she can do it, I can do it too. And while I'm doing this, I'm supporting not only her, but I'm keeping the dream alive amongst other artists that they can still make it. When I mention networks, that's maybe a 5th advice. I realized that I buy one artist and the next artist I buy usually comes out of the same network.
It's probably a friend of a friend or something.
Well,
like
it's a
that.
friend of the artist.
Yeah.
Once you buy one artist, you tap into a whole new community.
That's very true. I've gotten a lot of recommendations.
You do this
where
all the time.
The artists are just like, I don't know if you've heard of so-and-so, but like, look at these 3 pieces they did, and then they just go on a whole thing about like maybe they were in the studio and they're making some of them, maybe they have a whole perspective that I would have never gotten, and then I'm like staring at these pieces like, fuck, like I need this.
Yeah,
like,
and also
I had no idea before.
If you're going through all of the steps up until there to buy someone's work, then you probably also really trust their opinion when they come and say, hey, this is my friend, I think you should really talk to them because they have this work that I think is dope. And you've already gone through all the steps of they're my friend, I like their work, which probably means that I generally appreciate their eye for art. And so you have this level of trust going into it already where they've done a lot of the work for you.
I think Fiwo does that really well. He recommended this artist as Thomas Stokes, who has these like crazy, kind of like surreal but very earthy paleted how would I describe them? It's like oil paintings, I guess. But it's something where I didn't follow him or know his work. And then our friend Felocious is like, he's doing some of this most unique stuff. Like, look at his Instagram. So you go to it and like looking at his stories and you're seeing the behind the scenes. You're like, oh, there's something here. But this artist has been in the space for multiple years. I had never ran into them until an artist I like and trust was like, hey, I really like them and respect them and like some of the techniques they're doing, and then that like makes the light bulb go off in my head like, oh, holy shit, I need to be paying attention to this artist. Yeah. And a lot of it is just like being friends. Like the network part is just like being friendly, being outgoing, putting yourself in the position to just kind of like reciprocate and not like, I feel like some people they might be a little too closed off. They might just be like, oh, you didn't buy my art, like I don't want to talk to you. But like there's been times where like I don't buy art, but I develop a friendship with the artist and like 3 months later I buy like 3 pieces.
And when we talk about networks, you asked me before, so how does an artist get into a gallery? Well, it's through the network. That's what I recommend all of my artist friends when they say, hey, Magnus, I want to get into these galleries. I tell them, all right, let's be very strategic about it. What are the targets? So these are the galleries that we want to get into. Now let's identify the artists that are in those galleries and see who can you relate to. So rather than going directly straight to the gallery owner, you go through the artists, because the recommendation from the artist weights so much heavier than a recommendation from collectors, from people like me, and so on. I was standing next to the biggest collector in the world, and an artist approached us, and I kind of navigated the conversation. So he introduced the artist to one of the biggest art gallerists in the world, who he frequently buys from. Millions of dollars. So clearly, collector, gallerist have a very strong relation. And I thought, all right, this artist is set. Yeah. There can't be a stronger introduction than this.
Yeah, no better endorsement than the guy who's going to spend millions of dollars.
Because clearly when he endorses her, then he's going to buy from him her work, right? Yeah. So I saw the dollar signs already in the eyes from the gallerist, and I thought, everyone is going to thank me for this. I put it all together. The collector's happy, the artist is happy, and the gallerist is happy. Great. Nothing ever happened.
Nothing ever happened.
No, because the gallerist just didn't care.
Yeah.
However,
that happens all the time.
All the time, yeah. If a collector introduces an artist to a gallerist, it's just nothing happens. However, if an artist that the gallery already represents introduces another artist, that matters. It's the network that matters. Similar to how we find other artists through the network of the artist, that's also how gallerists find their artists.
I was going to say, how important do you think it is for artists in today's day and age to either live in like New York, LA, or one of these big cities to build this network?
Super important. We were able to show that the top 10 institutions, those with the biggest dots, 9 of them are in New York City.
That'll do
Only
it.
the Art Institute of Chicago is in Chicago.
Yeah.
So
what are the other nine institutions in New York City?
So
relatively,
it's quite well. What do you think? It can be museums and galleries.
MoMA, Met,
1,
MoMA,
2,
Met, Guggenheim,
3,
Gagosian.
4. Give me another.
It can also be galleries.
Give me another big museum.
Whitney.
Yes.
Okay.
5.
Is Pace Gallery one?
6. And then you had mentioned Venus over Manhattan earlier. Is that
it's
one
not part of the top 10?
I feel like
I know way less of the galleries than
I only know Pace, I think, in the gallery.
So you mentioned Gagosian, you mentioned Pace. Then on the commercial side, we have Hauser and Wirth, which is on the same level as Pace and Gagosian. And the fourth top gallery in the world is David Zwirner. Okay. So I'm repeating this, David Zwirner. These are also the gallery names you should remember. It's a bit like in soccer, Real Madrid, Barcelona.
Yeah, these are the ones
that you learn.
You file this one away.
Okay.
Next dinner conversation, you can show off. Oh, today I went to David Zwirner. Then I bought something at Gagosian. My friends from Hauser and Wirth invited me over for coffee. And then I went to what did I forget? Oh, and then
Pace.
I saw Pace's new building in Chelsea. It's actually a year old, but you can still say it's a new building.
It's newish. In New York, a year is pretty new.
Yeah, those are the 4 galleries, and then you say, and then on Sunday, Sundays I usually do my museum days.
Yeah.
I went to see art at the Guggenheim, the Met, right across the street, and then I went to the MoMA. Then I went further downtown to the Whitney. And on Monday, the Art Institute of Chicago is closed. But I took a flight to Chicago and then I visited the Art Institute of Chicago. Right. So there goes your Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday activities.
Right. So you really do get a boost by being in New York. There's something that physical interaction has that you don't get online.
Yeah. So I do want to ask on that, something I've been thinking about for the last little bit. You've been in the art space over a really interesting period of time with the internet kind of expanding. And clearly you've done very well for yourself, taking advantage of niches in the internet and different things like that. How have you felt that just the general increase of people being online, and then especially social media, Instagram, TikTok, how has that kind of shifted the art market or your perspective of how do you succeed as an artist, or has it not?
Yeah. So let's dissect this question into 2 questions. How big is the online art market? It's small. It's only during COVID, the art world took notice. Oh, there is the internet.
Yeah.
You can actually sell through the internet. And I'm saying this in a funny way, but before COVID, the online art market was 9% of the total value of the art market. As a side note, the total value of the art market is 60 billion. Okay. Now, sounds like a big number. However, let's put it into context, right? FedEx's revenue, one company in the logistic industry, FedEx's revenue is 85 billion. So all the players combined, Gagosian, Pace, David Zwirner, Hauser and Wirth, Sotheby's, Christie's, all the players combined make all the galleries, 20,000 galleries, the 100,000s of art advisors combined make less than FedEx. So, okay, let's put it into context. Yeah. I mean, every time I read about the art market, every newspaper has one section on the art market, one page. I always think, maybe FedEx should have one section.
Yeah. What's up with UPS today?
Yeah, or happy birthday to our new employees, or these are the new hires. So the art market is, in terms of revenue numbers, incredibly small. And now, so online is only 9% of those 60 billion. Very small. During COVID, it obviously went up to roughly 20%. And then it went down again to where we are right now at 14% of the value of the art market. So when you compare it to other industries, fashion, for example, it is comparably small, the online part. Now, you ask about another segment of your question was, how has the Instagram and the internet changed how artists can sell their works, and that has changed quite a lot, I would say. On the one hand, it gave galleries and existing sellers a new outlet to display their art. Before, initially, people had to visit the gallery space. Then they received email or fax. Then they received PDFs. And then they had Instagram, where they can actually show their works. And then there were online viewing rooms, which are very popular during COVID, where you could kind of a 3D walk through the gallery. So this is what happens on the selling side. When it comes to artists, for the first time, Instagram, and I'm really only talking about Instagram, not Twitter or anything else, Instagram helped artists to sell directly to buyers. The number one platform to discover art, for everyone, not only for first-time buyers, but for gallerists, for curators, for everyone is Instagram. So that's also one of my key recommendations to artists. Just last night at one of the events, an artist said, "Oh, I'm an artist. My first question is always, what's your Instagram?" And it's not only mine, it's everyone's, the top curators in the art world. They always look at the Instagram first. They don't Google you, they look at the Instagram. So if your Instagram name if it's hard to find you or you're private as an artist, that shows me you don't want to sell. You be a millionaire, or maybe you're not ready yet to sell your art. But if your Instagram, if I can't find you, that's I'm gone.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, it is super important. It's to the point where, like, I'll go to an artist's Instagram page, go to the very bottom, and then I like to see, like, what they first were doing, and then compare that to, like, what they're doing now to get a sense of, like, oh, they put this up in 2015. It's now 2023. You can kind of see how their style has changed. And it's a very easy way to show, like, proof of work in the sense that you're able to just see their entire catalog most of the time, or entire catalog of highlights. Whereas, like, their websites aren't always as orderly. Like, the website might be like, click here to see this gallery or this exhibit. It's like a timeline with a bunch of hyperlinks. The nice thing about Instagram is it's all just right there. And I think in general, in our space, people always have Instagrams. Like, I can't even think of an example where I've went to an artist page and been like, oh, you don't have an Instagram? Like, that's like suicide, right?
And here's something which I find, that's why I'm so excited about the NFT space. A lot of traditional art coming from traditional art market can learn a lot from digital artists that became successful through the NFT hype. Because what they can learn is there were artists that were working directly with buyers. Mm-hmm. They were promoting themselves. They were building brands. They were using all the tools that they had to further their career and to sell their works. They are true entrepreneurs. Every digital artist that ventured out and capitalized on the NFT hype is a role model for me, and I present so many of them to artists. I even wrote a whole book about them called How to Create and Sell NFTs, a guide for all artists. And in the book, I describe how the NFT space works, what the metaverse is, what artists can learn, traditional artists, which is the vast majority, painters, can learn from those artists that became famous during the NFT hype in 2021 and 2022.
Have you found that your more traditional artists have been receptive?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I guess more so, do they take what you say with a bit more weight because of your history with them and all of that? Or like, I'm curious what those conversations are like generally.
Well, the traditional art world thinks that this whole NFT stuff is gone. It's a joke. It was never relevant. They don't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to, 20, 30 events in the past couple of days. Mm-hmm. I didn't run into any of my art world friends.
You didn't see anybody?
Nobody. But look at Art Basel in Miami. Look at Freeze in LA. How many digital artworks do you see? And of those digital artworks, how many are sold as NFTs? I mean, at Art Basel Miami, there were maybe 4,000 works exhibited. At the main fair, I saw 8, maybe 9 digital artworks, of which only 4 were sold as an NFT. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a long ways to go.
Yeah, it's a long way to go. Now, why is that? On the one hand, the art market is super slow in adapting to any change. Mm-hmm. That's just how it is. You know, I mentioned it before with the example of the internet. It just takes forever until they adopt to anything new, because they're happy with the status quo, or they just don't want to shake it up, and don't know how to shake it up. Maybe. The second reason is it's a new technology, which is super overwhelming. Mm-hmm. We're not talking to a tech industry here. We're really talking to an art community.
Self-custody of your art. Like trying to show someone how to get on board to set up a MetaMask to buy art.
It's not easy.
You lost them.
So annoying.
And then they get a fake email and they click it and then they get phished and then their art goes out of their wallet and they're like, what the fuck happened? I think the biggest problem we have is like onboarding people who don't need to learn how to be their own bank. Like that's not exciting to a lot of people. Like, be your own art vault doesn't really do it for people. They're like,
no, it's painful. And the third reason why the traditional art world is not really buying into it is jealousy. There's this guy who nobody ever knew. He had no exhibitions in the traditional art market, definitely not in any of these institutions I mentioned before. And suddenly he sells for $69 million. Who is that guy? That's not fair. Look at his shitty art.
His name is literally Beeple crap. People are reading it like...
That's a joke, right?
Yeah.
Who is paying $69 million? Did you have a lot of people in your traditional circles talking about that sale after it happened?
Of course.
Like,
that put it on the map. Totally. And everyone was laughing at it. But when money gets involved, at some point people stop laughing in the art world because they think, oh, I'm not making a lot of money. Maybe I can make some money there. So that's when they started to get involved. And then a lot of them realized that there are obstacles to get involved. And it's scary. Put yourself into the position of an artist, right? You've been doing this for 20 years and you haven't been selling for not $1 million, not $100,000, not $10,000. You feel, hey, that's betrayal. It's unfair. It's not just. I've been working for 20 years on this. I went to art school. I did this. And now all these digital artists come and make so much money. So, of course, you're afraid of it and you don't want to get involved. And then everyone around you says the same thing. So you feel you're on the safe side. And I wanted to break this and say, hey, artists, let's take a step back. Digital artists have forever been neglected, right? 1,500 galleries in New York City, 1 or 2 galleries exhibited digital art exclusively, only digital art. Bitforms is one of them, and the second one was a come and go of a second player, different names. So it's tiny. Digital art represents 2, maybe 4%. Of the art market. Painting is everything. So these artists have been neglected forever, and suddenly they had the moment, and that's great. Finally, these artists could make some money off the stuff that they love doing, and that's great, and I'm so happy for each of them. Now, where does that all go? And that's what I describe in my book, How to Create and Sell NFTs, a guide for all artists. I'm telling them, hey guys, if you're a painter, which most of them are, because most of the artists are painters, 90% of them are, you don't need to become a digital artist. And I disagree. Beeple came to my class at Yale and told my students, who are mostly painters, that digital art will take over paintings, and in the future the MoMA will only show digital art. I think that's wrong. I think painting will still prevail simply because it's been around for hundreds of years.
It's very Lindy.
Yeah. I mean, Beeple, even in Beeple's studio, he has paintings that I think were painted by robots. Like, they're beautiful, but
yeah, that's what he showed at Jack Henley too, right?
I couldn't tell. Like, originally when I looked at it, I thought he painted it. And then talking to people, they're like, do you know a robot painted that? I'm like, what do you mean a robot painted that? It's like this fucking beautiful sunflower coming out. It's like a robot sunflower field. I'm like, I don't know anything. I was like, we have robots painting this? And it reminded me of Warhol and the factory, and like not actually like Jeff Koons or people who don't actually like make their own work but are just the creative directors of it. And that's just kind of a mind fuck for me as a collector, that I could see a painting, think the artist made it, and be like, oh, that was a robot.
I also think that another kind of reason that painting will stick around and be very revered is the income of AI art as well. It's significantly more challenging for AI to make a physical painting than it is to create a piece of digital art that looks like it was made by a person.
But what if you just had the robot that painted Beeple's painting paint the AI painting? It's still a fucking painting. Like, it's the...
Yeah.
It's like so precise, but it still has like the strokes and the texture, but it'll
at least take it'll take longer to get there.
Yeah.
Like, I can go and prompt Midjourney and get something that like looks pretty good or like similar to something that sells on Super Rare. But I can't go prompt Midjourney and then have a painting that you can hang on your wall.
Human eyes don't love blue light.
Yeah.
Like, we aren't meant to look at screens for 12 hours a day, even if it has our best art on it. It's like there's something about having an oil painting or acrylic or whatever.
Yeah, painting will not go away, but it's so important. What I believe is, and that means for painters, they shouldn't become digital artists. If you've been a painter for 20 years, why should you change your medium, right? Yeah. And that's not what we should ask from them. However, what I invite every artist to do is to try to understand what's going on in the NFT space, be open about it, understand the potential that it has. Because I believe that in the future, every painting that leaves the studio will be registered on the blockchain. Mm-hmm. It will fundamentally change how art is traded. Mm-hmm. I don't think that digital art will replace, or NFTs will replace paintings. However, NFTs will replace how art is traded, in the sense that I only buy an artwork from you if you have the NFT to show that you're as a proof of authenticity.
Yeah.
The piece of paper that I get today when I buy a painting that says, all right, you are the owner of the artwork, this artwork is real, will be replaced
100%.
with an NFT. And that will change everything. Now, how will this change the art market? First of all, it will make the art market more transparent, something that I've been fighting for forever, and which is part of my mission, why I'm here. Suddenly, I can see past prices, I can see comparable prices, I can see all the past transactions, the provenance. Sotheby's has own departments to look up the provenance of an artwork. Mm-hmm. This will all be in the blockchain. I can see immediately, all right, who was the previous owner, what price did it sell for, and so on. Perfect, fantastic. Secondly, I know it's real, because whoever has the NFT is the real owner.
You can't fake it. You can't print out a fake certificate of authenticity.
No,
fake stamp with the wax seal,
and
fake signature.
And then people always say, yeah, Magnus, but there are ways how to copy identical painting, right? You send it off to China or wherever, and they create identical copies of your painting. Yes, that exists. With photography, it's even easier. However, that doesn't matter, because the person has the original, whoever has the NFT. Mm-hmm. And the other one, which might be the original, is worthless because he doesn't have the NFT. Yeah. That same logic as with digital art, right? Yeah, I can right-click, save that, and then I have the same one.
But you don't
have the token. Done. So that will change. And artists will benefit from resale royalties. We've discussed this at large in our Twitter spaces. And for collectors, finally, they have a liquid asset. Right now, it's a pain. If I want to liquidate one of my artworks, I have to go through an intermediary. I have to go either to a gallerist or an art advisor, or I have to go to Sotheby's Christie's, who then take 20% of me and 20% of the buyer. It's a whole process. I need to ship it there. They look at it and so on. In the future, this will go trade immediately. And the institutions benefit from it too. Think about it today. I mentioned before that the art market is unfair and just because there are only a few institutions that really have an impact on the success of an artist. Now, in these institutions, a few people decide who gets shown. In a museum, there are two curators that decide, all right, this artist we want to show next. In a gallery, it's the gallery owner who decides, all right, this is the artist we're going to show. As it turns out, people always ask, why is the art market so why is inequality so big there? Why are people of color, underrepresented women, members of the LGBTQ plus community, why don't they get representation? Simply because those people in power in those relevant institutions are mostly white male. Mm-hmm. So they tend, I wrote another paper on this, I call it the home bias, when you tend to collect who you are. Mm-hmm. So I tend, and I catch myself in that too, I tend to collect artworks from guys rather than from women. I changed that because I caught myself when I wrote this paper 9 years ago. I caught myself in that trap. So since then I've been starting to buy way more from women. But this inequality will be changed because the power will go away from those two people, from the two curators, but will be brought back to the masses. Think about it that way. When I enter a museum today, at the entrance, you find the name of the board members. Those are the people who spent money. Mm-hmm. They're not the most dedicated people to the museum. They're the ones who are willing to spend $100,000 to sit on the museum board. in the future, I believe the names on that wall will be from the community, not the one who spends most money, but the one who's most active, who participates the most, because those people will be given voting power.
I feel like in a way we almost have that voting power. It's just not direct right now. It's like indirectly through either capital or promotion or whatnot. It's like we're able to kind of bypass some of the, like, there's not just two powerful people in our space. There's a bunch of varying degree of powerful people who try to put people on, and we vote with our time, wallet, whatever. But it is interesting to think, like, from the museum perspective, us being more involved in some way.
But you are, for example, one of the key stakeholders. We discussed this so many times, right? You're one of the board members. Yeah. You're one of the board members deciding which artists make it.
It's a lot of responsibility, like going back to what you said
know.
about making sure that you're representing people. That's something that I've thought about a lot getting in this space. It's like you talk to a lot of the woman artists and they're dealing with shit like, maybe you just want to be fully anonymous because like collectors are hitting on me for my looks and not my art, and it's like this weird power sometimes imbalanced. And you talk to a lot of women artists, you hear it constantly of just like, oh, this collector was like not really collecting my art because they liked it, but they liked maybe the idea of having a date at a bar with me or something. And it's like, for the male collectors or the male artists, like they don't really ever find themselves in that scenario or have to think about that. And it does make it like responsibility on our end to do better. And
crypto even more so than traditional
like,
art is such a male dominated field. It's just like all straight white dudes.
And a lot of them who don't have like the people skills as well. Like they were early to this stuff because maybe they had certain skills and lacked other skills, and then it doesn't translate to collecting art and being like a human with reasonable boundaries and expectations. And it's frustrating for me as a collector because I hear all these horror stories and I'm just like, fuck, like I think I'm doing better, but I'm like, I could do so much better too.
But the beauty about the crypto space is because of Twitter, reaction is so much faster. Think of the glitch show at Sotheby's.
Sotheby's.
So Sotheby's did a show that was selling digital artists, and all of them male artists.
It's like 16 pieces, all by mail.
All by mail. And then Twitter, boom. Right, immediately they took down the show and said, "All right, we're going to postpone it and change it." In the traditional art world, this wouldn't have happened.
No.
This might have happened, 10 years fast forward, and they were said, "Oh, maybe 10 years ago you should have included more women in that show." It happened immediately here.
Speaking of Sotheby's and Christie's, how have you? Like, I've noticed them change their tune a lot since getting into our space. Do you think that, have you noticed any like traditional collectors that you know going through Christie's and Sotheby's to buy digital art? Given, I think Christie's recently, they have one right now where you can like pay with ETH, but you still have to like tie your name, your legal name and all that stuff. And it's like, do you notice any traditional collectors coming in because of the efforts that Christie's and Sotheby's did? Because in my head, it's like the buyers are just the digital buyers going through the hoops to go on Christie's and Sotheby's.
Yeah, so like most digital buyers, it's like annoying that they're selling on Sotheby's. It's like, I have to go fucking bid on Sotheby's website.
And like the
now.
argument is that like this is creating some type of value for the artist, whether it's bringing in new collectors from Sotheby's or Christie's standard collecting groups, or some people just want the prestige of being like, oh, I sold it Sotheby's.
Yeah, it's funny because when I read the bios of so many digital artists who had some success, they always say, yeah, sold at Christie's and Sotheby's. In the traditional art world, nobody wants to mention it. It's not good to sell there because it shows that your art is being
turned over.
Yeah, turned over. It's kind of ugly. I must say, big applause to Christie's and Sotheby's for being so entrepreneurial and jumping on that opportunity. They are auction houses. They sell not only art, they sell watches, jewelry, handbags, cars, whatever they can make money with, and which is legal. yeah, they were fast, and I think they did a good job. They're coming from. These are established companies, so they have to go through a little bit more regulatory stuff. That's why the checkout process won't happen as you might know it from OpenSea.
Yeah.
Does it add to the credibility and value of an artist? No, it doesn't. Did traditional collectors, take notice because Sotheby's and Christie's were selling it? Yes, maybe a little bit. I think it helped that they got involved, but I wouldn't overestimate the influence that it had. I think for them it was smart. It's also smart for Pace to engage in a partnership with Art Blocks. I think it's smart from Adam Lindemann to do it because maybe from all these buyers, the crypto buyers, some of them stick and are going to buy other pieces from Pace. So for them, it's a customer acquisition tool. To find new collectors that hopefully buy from their program.
I think there's probably a better chance that the NFT collectors buy physical art, at least right now, than there is that the physical art collectors come in and participate in your
seen
NFT.
it happen with me.
Yeah.
I'm over here buying James Jean prints and
or like we're at Art Basel last year and Allie and I are shopping around for our new place. We're like, oh, that seems kind of nice. I don't know. And it's like a whole history that we don't really know very well because all we've ever known is NFTs.
Yeah, but I find that Christie Sotheby's thing to be so confusing in my head because I'm a collector who likes to collect art, and I've never bought a piece from Sotheby's or Christie's, and it's like the amount of friction for them to take my money is too high.
And I think typically, and maybe this has changed, but at least for a while, it felt like everything that was selling there was selling for less than it would have sold for on Super Rare.
Because there's not showing that buyer's premium. There's like a fucking 20-25% buyer's premium. So you're like, oh, this looks underpriced. It's $10,000. And you're like, oh, well, that doesn't include the $2,500 I'm going to have to pay on top of that. And then that kind of adds up. And you're not used to that as a native in our space. It's like pretty transparent. I'm going to pay this amount. 2.5% or whatever might go to a platform, 10% might go to Super Rare, whatever, and then it's very clear. It's not like, oh, I'm on Sotheby's and this looks like a good deal. Oh shit! Well, not all the fees are there, and that's for me. Like the people I see buying the things on Sotheby's and Christie's that I'm interested in are all people from our space. They're like willing to jump through the hoop. I don't see a new collector coming in who was like, oh, I really liked Brooke's work because I saw it at Christie's in person. But I'm also, biased to what I'm seeing on my timeline. And I just had to ask you because I know you're seeing more of the other side of it. And I just want to know if my hunch was correct. Because you're very much a data person who has numbers and figures and research to back things up. And I'm very much the opposite. I'm this more qualitative person where I just pick up what I notice trend-wise through me symbiotically just staring at the fucking screen and reading.
But you mentioned something which is interesting, and that's really what we're observing right now at this moment, where we see digital artists who had a lot of success and made a lot of money in the digital space outside of the traditional art world, entering the traditional art world. Talking about Tyler Hobbs' Pace,
Yes.
the whole Art Blocks Pace partnership, Proof with Venus Over Manhattan, Adam Lindemann's gallery. Beeple did something with Jack Henley last year. So we have a couple of examples where digital artists who gained recognition are entering those traditional institutions. Very interesting to see. Obviously, both have incentives to do that. We mentioned before some of these collectors, crypto native collectors, might stick and buy from the existing program. And I think it's a very smart move for digital artists to walk that bridge into traditional art world because that helps them to manifest their value. What really... There's so many artists that build up a brand and they sell for a lot of money. However, their lasting value, their secondary market value is almost non-existent. So they push up their prices in the primary market, and their work you can never sell. So you end up buying something for 100, 150,000, but you can't sell it for nothing. Although everyone recognizes their brand. Now, this is a fate that happens to those branded artists that don't have gallery representation and are not part of the traditional art world system. Because what really manifests the value and keeps it, the longevity of the value and the price points that you have, is being plugged into institutions that we mentioned before and others that feed into that central network. Look at Refik Anadol, what he does with the MoMA. That's huge. That's so big because his prices, which are already high, I believe they will remain at that level and maybe even go up further. But there are other artists that enjoyed a lot of traction, but their prices might go down when the investor crowd, the crypto natives, move on to the next thing and drop that artist.
And the crypto natives aren't afraid to sell. Like there's pieces that crypto natives will buy for $100,000. And if they need to sell it 6 months later for $10,000, like they're selling it for $10,000.
Average holding period of a digital artwork is 30 days.
Yeah,
that feels high, honestly.
Average holding period of a physical artwork, a painting, is
8 years.
Yeah, definitely years. I'm gonna go.
He's always better. Let's see.
Yeah, I'll say 15 years, maybe. 8
Yeah, I was
years
gonna
is
up
too
to
low.
like 12 years.
Over 10 years.
Give me a number.
I'm saying 12.
15.
Okay, no, he's closer. 30 years.
30 years.
See, I almost said 30, and then I was like, that's just way
That's
too
too
long.
much.
Yeah, because most of them never
Never
sell,
sell.
right? So 99 of
the
them never
average.
sell.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
So, yeah. There-
Do you think if the traditional art world had a liquid, I mean, some things that you bought 100K are not liquid at 100K, but they are liquid at 10 or 5.
If there was OpenSea for the
15,
traditional art
if there
world.
was OpenSea for traditional art, do you think people would sell it to realize the loss, or do you think that they would still be so tied to that physical representation that they would still hold it for that amount of time?
I think initially, yes, everyone would look at, all right, what's it worth? Let's try and flip it. Because I've been sitting on it for 30 years. I just want to get rid of it. I want to buy
I
something
want
new.
new art on the wall. 30 years of the same piece.
And then you will soon realize that there is no market for it. As we said at the beginning, there is no market for all art.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. And there is a huge market for a little bit of art. But in general, the thesis is right when you say nobody's going to buy the stuff that you just bought in the gallery. Nobody's going to buy any of that stuff. So even if we have a more liquid market, not the flipping thing will initially happen, and then people realize, no, we can't just trade everything. However, I believe that the market will still double or triple in size simply because the friction is taken out of the process to sell your works. Will every work be sold? No. But more works will be sold.
Yeah.
And that's so needed.
Yeah.
It's so needed. I mean, the market is small. In fact, the art market is in a recession. It has remained at the 60 billion value for the past 10, 15 years. It hasn't gone up. In fact, it has gone down. The only thing that has gone up is the very top end of the market. Those high-priced blue-chip works, their value has increased quite dramatically. That's why the overall value of the market remained the same. But at the bottom end, which represents the real art market,
99.9%.
yeah, it's failing. That's why it's so needed that we have new buyers coming in to the art market, and we make it easier for them to buy art. Price transparency. I have to ask for the price. How ridiculous is it? Just tell me. Make it. What's the most complicated thing that you can do so I don't buy art? Well, first of all, make it super exclusive. VIP. Art Basel has 3 or 4 different VIP levels. All right. So, okay. First of all, make it super exclusive. And then once you make it inside, you have to ask for the price. How embarrassing, how ridiculous is this?
It's so stupid.
Right? I don't know if this piece is worth $1 million or if it's only worth $10,000. I'm not going to embarrass myself.
Yeah,
Hey,
I don't
I've
want to
been
put myself in the situation where I ask and they say too much and I'm like, oh, okay, I can't afford it. See you later.
Right? It's embarrassing.
Yeah,
it's not what we are used to.
They're looking at my socks. They're like, for you, this piece is $100,000.
No, so what they do in your case is like, he's probably an art student. He just wants to see what other artists cost. So they will say, yeah, it's already sold.
It's already sold.
Or it's on hold.
They won't even tell me the price it's sold for. Just that it already sold.
No, they just, that's just, they're trying to keep it exclusive. So I have to ask for the price. Often they then call the director, who then comes down and wants to engage me in a conversation. And all I want is the price. Just tell me, is it 10 or is it a million? Right? Just tell me the price. And then you have the price. So what? Is that overpriced or underpriced? You have no comparables. Because most art, there's no database. That's what I tried to do with my Shazam for Art app. And they kicked me out of the App Store because galleries hated that suddenly you were able to find comparable prices. They hate that, this transparency. And so you end up with a price, I don't know, $15,000, $20,000, and you have no idea.
Yeah.
Simply no idea. Is that
it a
good
good
or bad?
deal? Am I paying 10 times
Obviously,
too
you
much?
walk
Yeah.
away. Obviously.
Yeah.
Why would I stay? I'm confused.
Especially in the current era of like how people shop. Like in any other market, if DeeZe was talking about buying a fucking backpack and he said he looked at 500 options because he couldn't decide which was the best
200
one.
backpack recommendations.
Yeah.
It took me 5 months to pick a backpack.
Do you have one now?
Yeah, I picked like the Toomey large 17-inch
Yeah.
esports backpack. But it was this whole thing where like every website has the price. I didn't have to like call Toomey and be like, I'm looking at backpacks and I like yours, but like, is this a $300 backpack or a $5,000 backpack?
Think about how easier it's going to be once NFTs come into play and everything is on the blockchain. I can find comparable
Every
prices.
comparable, every piece
Everything.
that the artist has
And even
ever
with
sold.
NFTs right now, it's not that easy to find. Like that's still, even in that space, there needs to be a lot more
Yeah,
done.
but we will get there. And
Yeah.
that's going to be the beauty of it. And I can't wait. It's going to be fantastic. And everyone will benefit from this. Artists will benefit because suddenly the work gets sold more often in the first place. And then the resale, the royalties will increase because people are going to sell it more often. Galleries will benefit because they will simply make more money. The role of galleries will shift. Rather than representing 20 artists, they will become managers of artists. So of one or two artists where they won't take 50% but more like 20%, similar to what you see in the movie industry where you have managers, because artists don't want to deal with all that stuff that DeeZe is constantly complaining and sharing his ideas, how the photo should be taken and what light and what day
Just
of time.
Take a higher angle shot with just like a little bit more green.
Yeah.
No, I would never
And
tell
collectors will benefit because they know that the work that they're buying is real. They
Yeah.
cut out some of the costs of the middleman.
What gives you the confidence as a collector to know, like, okay, I'm buying something that is fairly priced? Like, when I'm looking at an art piece and I really like it, and I go look at the artist's last 10 sales, I'm like, all right, they've sold between $10,000 to $20,000. So if I get this piece closer to 10, I'm pretty happy. And maybe deciding at 17.5, I'm out. And it's like very transparent. You have a plan going in. There's no guessing. And like I can't, like, I think that is probably a reason. I mean, other than just not having capital. Not having capital was another reason I didn't collect art. Period. It was like I was never in a position to take the $20,000 and be like, I'm gonna light this on fire. And if it turns into something later, cool. Like that was never a thing in my world. It was like that $20,000 is like rent, mortgage, food, whatever.
Student loans.
But then after that, it's like information. It's like,
Yeah.
well, how do I know what I'm buying is real? It's like if I didn't have any connections with artists, so it was like I would never go to I don't know. I would never go to a gallery in New York and just like buy a piece.
Yeah.
Or think about buying a piece.
I
would
think there's
enjoy
also
it.
like accessibility as well, where like the traditional art market, especially prior to being in NFTs, but still now feels very foreign to me, of like this thing that exists, but I can't be a part of it really. Like I couldn't just like show up. Whereas if you want to get into NFTs, you just like make a Twitter account and start reply guying to NFT artists and say,
Yeah.
I love your work.
Go on their
They'll be like,
Instagrams.
thanks dude. Like appreciate it. It becomes so easy to get to know them and be just like ingratiate yourself in that community.
Yeah, I
I've
think
been
it
to
has to be.
thousands of galleries, and every time I enter a gallery, I still feel like, ugh.
They don't totally want me here.
I went to a really small gallery that the gallerist was friends with someone we had on the pod back in January, and they were playing a fun game with me where they were just like asking me how much I thought art on the walls cost. Like they would have like a big painting, and they'd be just like, "What do you think this is priced at?" And it was like a smaller gallery, so like nothing I think was over like $20,000, but it was fun. I was pretty close. I was like, 8 to 10, and they're like, yeah, it's listed at like 95 or something. Like,
So at least at that guessing game, you were winning.
I was,
Today you're
I was
losing.
good, but I knew there was not like a hidden Basquiat on the wall
Right,
or
yeah,
something.
because it was
like,
some
that
smaller
was gonna
gallery.
be absurd. It was more like one of the galleries that you mentioned that is smaller and focused on artists at the beginning of their career. And it was
But
just a fun game
I've
to
been
play.
bashing the gallery world a little bit too much today, because the truth is behind all these galleries are hardcore, passionate, art-loving people, mostly artists, who are doing it really because they want to support artists.
Yes.
Nobody enters the gallery game because they want to make money. Their passion is, I've never, restaurant people and art people share one thing: it's passion for what they're doing. And in an industry that is extremely tough, I think what they need is change will not happen from inside of the art world, because so many are stuck in the existing system and they don't want to break it because they fear that they will alienate too many people. I felt it myself when I tried to change it and build this app. I got punished so many times. I wasn't allowed to enter a couple of galleries. People were shouting at me.
They got you on lists.
Yeah, put me on blacklists and
The
so
opposite
many
of Larry's list.
so many blacklists. So change is difficult if it happens from inside of the art world. That's why there will be builders out there, great entrepreneurs who have little understanding of the art market, but just employ the tools and the technologies, blockchain technology in particular, and put it onto the art world. And once they are able to convince top artists, I'm talking here about Jeff Koons, Damon Hirst, those top players at the very top, and convince them that every work that they sell from now on needs to be registered on the blockchain, and they will not authenticate a work if it's not traded on the blockchain, then everyone else will follow. And I believe this moment is not going to happen tomorrow, but it will take some time until we get there.
Yeah.
And then, it will be beautiful.
But like, I feel like at least 5, 10 years out.
Yeah.
Always feels like it's 5 or 10 years
Yeah.
away. And then like 5 years happen and you're like, oh, it's not
I just
there.
know other industries will be first. Fashion will be first. Luxury industries, watches, cars, shoes
I mean,
will
we're
be
already
first, and then
seeing,
the
like,
art world will
beginning
adapt.
of some of it.
Yeah.
I have a couple of those shoes, NFTs. They're like
Nike's
vaulted.
starting to figure their shit out.
And like they're vaulted by Brinks in
Yeah.
some way. And it's...
Yesterday I was talking to this guy. He does it with title records at the DMV.
Oh, shit.
So, that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? When you buy a car, today you have to get the piece of paper. It sounds so funny when you say it, piece of paper, and then in exchange for a bag of cash, and then the paper needs to be sent to the DMV sends it back. Ugh.
No, I mean, yeah, but the house buying process is
Ah.
another one. Where
Oh
it's
my god!
like
Don't get me started.
the deed to your house, and it's just
Yeah,
stacked.
well, and then it takes like months for them to actually file the deed to your house. So it's like I bought a place in December, and for the last like couple months, like technically I didn't really own the house yet because the deed wasn't the official deed wasn't filed yet.
And now think about how complicated it gets with mortgages.
Yeah.
If they're still on it, and other liens.
And there's like the lender, and then the broker of the lender, and then like there's maybe a wholesale mortgage company working with the broker and the lender.
That's all coming, and I believe even those industries will be before the art market. Although this whole thing really started to take off because of art.
Yeah.
But I think art will be the last to adapt to and implement it into standardized processes and in every transaction.
Yeah.
That's I might be wrong.
because it's so like nepotistic or incestuous, or it's kind of built this base.
Well, I think it's also like built on these old ways, right? Of just like this history that you don't want to be the one to shake up the history.
No, and like
of,
he
and those people in
experienced-
power
Yeah.
are they're not crypto people.
No,
They don't need
like
to be.
you experienced it trying to get the database made, where they're like, "This can't happen. Like we can't lose our pricing power."
Average collector age is 65. So it's the age group that is the least open for all things blockchain.
Yeah, whereas like with mortgages, car loans, whatever, it's just gonna be like entrepreneurs who recognize there's this inefficiency in the market. They come in, and those industries are much more wide and less nepotistic, and there's much more like different players who have a lot of pools. So if one of them adopts it, then maybe the other ones are forced to adopt it out of like competitive necessity. The art market just feels like it's like this snowball going down a hill that is just like not really going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, and also the typical buyer is not someone who's necessarily going to be like captivated by the use cases of crypto in general, where it's like they're not worried about losing their money or all these things that I think generally draw like, you know, myself or DeeZe, other people to crypto in the first place of, you know, decentralized finance and all this stuff. They're very wealthy people who don't care about decentralized finance or any of the other
They have,
crypto
like,
applications.
millions of dollars in brokerage accounts with wealth managers. Like they're cozy. They don't really care about taking money out and being their own bank.
We should probably get to this question. We're just getting up to noon.
Okay. We have a question we ask everybody. I think we might have cheated and told you ahead of time what it would be, but if you watched the pod, you already know. Question is, if you were writing an autobiography today, what would the title be? And the background for this is I take your answer to this question, and then I try to make a prompt in Midjourney that makes the album artwork for this episode. So like each episode has its own art, and then I make the base for it based off of your answer to this question. So no pressure.
I'm so curious what others answered. Mine would be part 1.
Part 1.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part 1 always means there's, you know, part
There's going to
two.
be a part 2
Something
coming.
about, you know, follow up, repeated purchases. I also think I've done a lot of things. Art was always at the center of it, but around these things I've been, you know, being an academic, in the army, doing a lot of sports. So maybe there is at some point a part 2 where I focus entirely on something else, or I just continue it. Also, if I continue to stay in the art world, which I probably will, everything in the art world just takes so long. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And once you finish the first marathon, there might be another
marathon to run.
Yeah.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Part 2.
I like that. Well, thank you for hanging out with us. This has been great. It's been way better
really
than
fun.
better than a Twitter space.
Oh yeah, big
Being
time.
able to make eye contact, see you, not just yelling into my phone, pacing around my house. Definitely a way different vibe. But I look forward to talk to you again. Go deeper. We'll do part 2 and see what comes up.
Yeah.
But no, thank you, man.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.